I'm not of this world. Sufis kind of report back from the happenings. Matter of fact, the name Sufi comes from what they wore. So that's how they got identified. Because, you know, Al-Ghazali was a Sufi. Al-Ghazali was a Sufi. And what they wore was like a sheepskin, this wool. So Sufi refers to the clothing in which they wore this sort of, I'm leaving the world, so to speak. Al-Ghazali spent, and I think it's 10 years, kind of wandering. Now, Ghazali is a great, we would say, scholar, but he's a philosopher of Islam. And we're not naming some other names we'll get into in the discussion of this, or some of the philosophers. But many people adhere to, no matter which one of these philosophical views you take, most of us, we recognize and hold Al-Ghazali in great esteem. He is considered to be, well, not considered to be, what he did, he wrote what was called, and I'm going to put the name of it in my mind right, but anyway, he wrote an argument against the philosophers. And it is this argument against the philosophers that have impacted the world, the Islamic world, since his time. It's a turning point in Islamic theology. And we need to understand that Al-Ghazali is a pivotal point when it comes to Islamic philosophy, theology, doctrine, all of those things. And again, guidance. So we talked about guidance on Wednesday, but this is how guidance, let's say, gets born, but how we begin to tie into, well, this Asari, I'm an Asari, I follow them. That becomes your guidance. No, I'm with the Mu'tazil. Now, we may not use these terms as much today, but the thinking, the information, the philosophy, the thoughts are still present with us today. So the Sufis are more your mystics. They're more what people call saints. They're the people who move to the top of the mountain. They're the scholars who, they're the scholars who dive into metaphysics, let's say. And all of them have a little physics. But the Sufis are probably more metaphysics. So a lot of time when people say, I'm one of these, when I see them, I know that they don't understand. They don't know the doctrine of that thing. Even the Salafi. They say we're Salafi. But most of them have no clue of what Salafi is. Okay? And sometimes, and maybe Salafi being one of those terms, you know, it's a term that, in other words, if I say I'm a Stocktonian, meaning I live in Stockton, I'm a Stocktonian. Salafi is kind of like that, meaning that the people who lived in Medina, who lived, and they want to say like the prophet, they did everything like the prophet and so forth and so on. But it's just a way of saying this is the community life. This is the way people act. This is the way people did things in Medina. It doesn't mean necessarily, but it has become a philosophy, an ideology, a doctrine. But it has just grown out of sometimes we may call normal word, normal language, that people may say, oh, that we may say he's a Sunni. He's a Sunni. Oh, he's a Shiite. Oh, he's a Salafi. You know, it's not as big a deal, I think, as we make them to be. But we have divided ourselves into these classes of people, classes of doctrine, as they say when we call sects. We've divided ourselves up. But most of us have no clue as to what we have divided ourselves up into and what we have joined. It's just a word. It's something that feels good. So people's different Aqeeda, maybe they may classify their Aqeeda as Sufi. We say we are followers of Wahdatul Muhammad. That's our Aqeeda. We're stating our Aqeeda. I'm in association with the community of Wahdatul Muhammad. There's a body of knowledge that comes with that. There's a way that we do things. There's a way we talk. It's a culture that comes with that. And we're buying into all of that when we say, I'm a follower, I'm a student of, I'm an association of. That becomes our Aqeeda. Because it comes, and I heard the Imam say, I remember it was one of the things, a long time ago he said, it's one of the things that led me to begin to look into philosophy. He said, we have our own philosophy and ideology. And I thought, wow, what is that? So what is our philosophy and our ideology? He was then separating us, or at least trying to carve out a space for us as a people, as a community, that in all of this issues of doctrine and philosophy and theology and faith and all of this, he was saying, look, we have our own. Wait for me to give it to you. Wait for me to explain it to you. And then yet, many of us may not have really heard the philosophy behind what the Imam said. What was the ideology behind the words? It's not just listening to him say a thing and then repeating what he said and saying, oh, the Imam said. Yeah, he said, but what was his philosophy behind it? What was his ideology behind it? And that's the way we have to look at all of these so-called Islamic theology schools. They all come with their own culture, their own language, their own acts, their own behaviors, and they overlap. Ours, the community of Word Dima, we overlap into many of these things. That's why sometimes you hear someone say something, and maybe, matter of fact, sometimes we hear a Christian say something. We say, yeah, we believe like that, but not true. No, we don't believe like that. We don't believe that same thing from an ideology point of view, from a philosophy point of view. No, we don't believe that. Jesus being one of them, probably one of the major ones. Do we believe in the so-called miraculous birth of Jesus? Yes, we do. Christian says, I do too. But not from the same philosophical or ideological point of view. We don't have the same doctrine about that as they do. But yet we say we believe the same way. On the surface, yes. But as we begin to dig into that thing, no, we don't. And this is what I'm trying to say about belief. So when each one of us have chosen our Aqeedah, you've chosen yours, I've chosen mine, and even again within the larger Aqeedah, we also have other Aqeedahs. That's why sometimes you may say, man, I can't get with that email. You can't. Because even though he is a follower thereof, his Aqeedah is different. His Aqeedah has taken a, for as we may be concerned, taken a turn. Okay? But there's other people that says, I'm fine with him. I love what he says. I listen all the time to him. I buy all his CDs. I whatever. Their Aqeedah and that Aqeedah has a lot in common. It's kind of seamless. And some of us, we just take our Aqeedah from some party, some imam. Whatever their Aqeedah is our Aqeedah. However they say believe, we believe. We don't spend no time trying to develop our own. So we have to be very careful in this world. We even have to be careful in the books we read. Because, you know, early on, I mean, I was a person who, I bought a lot of books. I mean, I had books on top of books. But after a while, I began to see that, you know what, I'm not going to buy this author's book anymore. Or I got to read this book a little bit more carefully. Because, not because of what he was, but you begin to see and sense people's philosophy. That's why, again, I mean, and I've said this to you before, you call in, you ask a question, you make a certain comment. Sometimes I hear your philosophy. I hear your belief system. And in a lot of ways, that's what we want to hear. But we need to also stop and make sure we're hearing our own. What is it I believe? I don't know what I believe about a thing. Is the Quran created? Is it uncreated? People say the Quran always was with Allah. Just as the Christians say, Jesus was always with God. Jesus and God has never been separated. Well, you know, we say the same thing about the Quran. We say that God and the Quran has always been together. I mean, what kind of belief is that? What is that philosophy? You know, I mean, that sounds just like what the Christian just said. Jesus and God has always existed together. There's never been a time that there was not a Jesus and there was not a God. We say, oh, there's never been a time that there was not Allah and there was not the Quran. Hello? What are you saying? What did you just say? See, when you hear yourself, when you listen to yourself, you may be able to correct yourself and say, now what was that I just said? What does that mean? I don't even know what I meant. I can't even follow the logic of that my own self. I better stop saying that. I don't want to repeat that anymore. Again, it's just an opinion. It's just my best guess at a thing. But yet it's in your belief system. I hope and pray that we've been clear. That's what I'm trying to do. Because as we get into these doctrines, and the men, for the most part, the men behind them, I want us, because see, we're trying in this life right now today, surely, this community is trying to identify and codify its Aqeeda. Don't think that we're just here talking and praying. And no, we have a job and a responsibility. We have to codify. We have to be able to write down, explain the, let's say, the philosophy, the ideology of this community we call in association with Imam Wadathuddin Muhammad. We're not here for play and amusement. But we have to first of all understand philosophy, and let alone from an Islamic point of view. We have to understand theology from an Islamic point of view. Faith from an Islamic point of view. Guidance from an Islamic point of view. Ideology from an Islamic point of view. So that we can then take the language of Wadathuddin Muhammad, and then we can create. We can write books, thousands of books. We can have scholars. But it's not just about the community of Wadathuddin Muhammad. Everybody out there who says, I'm a Sufi, I'm an Asari, I'm this and I'm that, you need to be able to say to yourself, here is what we believe. Just like right there, them 5 points. Tell me the 5 points in which you believe, and then can you give the argument, the cause and effect, the proof of a thing. How do you deliver the proof? Because if Islam is, and I say going to be saved, then it's going to take philosophers. Like the great philosophers of old. That's what Al-Ghazali is credited with. He is credited with saving Islam. He is known as the proof of Islam. That's his, let's say, unofficial title. Al-Ghazali is known as the proof of Islam, the cause and effect. He is the one who said, let me codify, let me explain. Not only explain, let me also dispute what the other Islamic scholars are saying. And he did it in such a logical manner, such an intellectual manner, that he produced a whole new thinking, a whole new theology within the theology of Islam. And now, in some corners, he is known as the proof of Islam. You need to read Al-Ghazali. Al-Ghazali has some very interesting books. One, I know I got on my shelf right here, I got a couple of others, but one is the, what is called the Book of Religious Learning. The Books of Religious Learning. It's a four volume book. Just like you hear Muslims say, well, and I'm going to wrap this thing up. Muslims say, well, we don't do music. Well, you know, maybe you need to read Al-Ghazali a little bit. You know. I mean, but we need Al-Ghazalis today. We need new Al-Ghazalis who can sit down and write intelligently, logically, Islamically, that make and spin the whole Islamic world around, and what I would say is save Islam. Save Islam from the brink that we see it as today. Islam is, as Allah says, I perfected this thing. Now what you guys do with it, now that's on you. You will be judged by it. You will be judged on it. But you cannot let the reputation of the Quran and Allah and the Prophet be turned upside down and looked upon as a ridicule. Again, as I've asked the question in the beginning, can we govern? Can we govern? What is it? What do we believe? What is it that we believe? Brother Kareem, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah. And this is only an opinion that I am rendering. Yes, sir. The other schools of thought was addressing the circumstances that prevailed at that time. That guided their thought. They were answering circumstances and situations that prevailed at that time. We're in a new dispensation of time. There is the situation now is amped up, it's different. There are different circumstances that we are confronted with that Al-Aqeedah, Hanbali, Maliki were not addressing. And it is my opinion that we are, whether we realize it or not, we are in the process of writing another school of thought. It may be at its inception, it is haphazard and all of that scattered. But I believe that we are introducing another school of thought. It is in its infancy. But I believe that if we are successful at even the circumstances and the situation successfully, using our source, that we are in the process of creating another school of thought. We can in its infancy. I truly believe that. I'll out with that. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Alaikum assalam. Let me say this. And the philosophers in the madhab, they're not necessarily dealing with issues that are not issues that we don't have today. Many of the issues are the issues we have today. But first of all, I'm speaking within the religion, within the religious theology, first of all. I'm not trying to say, what do we do about economic something. I'm talking about what do we believe as Muslims from a theological point of view. What is it that this community believes and is putting forward so that we can present to the wider community? That's the first thing. The second one may be the method itself. First thing is Aqeeda. Second is method. Then and I say the third, but the third then is institution building. But if all goes right in the first two, you will be institution building. But now they didn't have technology back in that day. But just like we struggle with whether Muslims can listen to music or not listen to music, whether Muslims should sing or not play an instrument, all those things. These are not new issues in Islam. Okay? We wrestle with them today. We don't know which way to go, And some of us just say, hey, forget it, I'm going this way. All right? We wrestle with how much a woman should be covered. We wrestle with, many issues that are just fundamental to our being. What does fighting mean? Who are we fighting nowadays? Do we need to fight? I think that we have to, first of all, pick up some of these books, and I know somebody's going to say, what did the Dean Muhammad say? Don't pick up them books. Well, I would suggest you pick up a few books. Okay? You've listened to him long enough that you should now have a good foundation for reading these books. But my purpose, let's say it that way, my purpose is to say to you, first of all, let's learn how to do it. Let's at least take a look at what other people have done so we can figure out how we're going to do it. I'm not saying take this or take that thought. I'm talking about the how-to of a thing. Let's figure out, how do we philosophize? Do we know how to philosophize? But we're not talking about trying to bring back the sciencing, as we used to call it, back in the Nation of Islam. We have to figure out, how do we philosophize? How do we create? How do we pick up ideology? And we'll have to get into some of these words and terms. But again, we are building, we're examining our own belief system so that we better understand ourselves. We have an Aqeeda, no doubt. That's not the issue. It then is trying to figure out what it is, codify it, make it available to everybody. And people may, let me just say very quickly kind of what I mean by codify it. Let's go back to music. And let's say again we're using the Imam. So let's find out, what did the Imam say about music? How did he approach it?
90 seconds.
Take that and build, and I say a philosophy around it, a how-to about it. What are the goods and the bads of it? You can't just say, oh, everybody should know that. Well, yeah, but, if that was the case, they would have never had preserved the Quran. They say, oh man, enough people out there know that. Don't worry about that. You don't need to write it down.
60 seconds.
That's how the Quran got saved. They codified it. They wrote it down. They made sure it was preserved. The Prophet didn't do that. Abu Bakr didn't do that. It wasn't done until Omar's time. Or maybe it started in Abu Bakr's time. Maybe I might be wrong with that. Maybe it did do it in Abu Bakr. Because Omar suggested it to Abu Bakr. That's what I'm saying is, there's work to be done. There's thoughts to be had. Anyway, we're at the end of our day, inshallah. We want to thank you for joining American Muslim 360. This is Thomas Abdul-Salaam on American Muslim 360, Straight Up with Abdul-Salaam. I want to thank you this morning, inshallah. Again, Juma is at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 a.m. on the West Coast, and 11 in the mountains, and 12 in the Central, and again 1 p.m. on the West Coast. Go to MuslimJournal.net and check out the Time to Be Grateful. Also go to AmericanMuslim360.com and click on the Twin Servant and check out the mediation there. We're going to leave you here with a quick song. We're going to enjoy you. Inshallah, have a blessed day. Assalamu alaikum. Juma Mubarak to you.